vinner chaque dia, chaque negative så vi har slipper vi har så chaque negative vi har slipper vi har så chaque negative skare vinner chaque dia, 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 chaque negative chaque negative and shalakadio, score heavy in the shalakadio, chaque negative and so behind, skipper behind, chaque negative, behind, skipper behind, chaque negative, shalakadio, score heavy in the shalakadio, chaque negative and shalakadio, score heavy in the shalakadio, chaque negative and shalakadio, score heavy in the shalakadio, chaque negative and shalakadio, score heavy in the shalakadio, chaque negative and so behind, skipper behind, chaque negative, behind, skipper behind, chaque negative, shalakadio, score heavy in the shalakadio, chaque negative and shalakadio, score heavy in the shalakadio, chaque negative and so behind, score heavy in the shalakadio, chaque negative and so behind, score heavy in the shalakadio, chaque negative and shalakadio, score heavy in the shalakadio, chaque negative and shalakadio, score heavy in the shalakadio, chaque negative and shalakadio, score heavy in the shalakadio, chaque negative and shalakadio, score heavy in the shalakadio, chaque negative and shalakadio, score heavy in the shalakadio, chaque negative and shalakadio, score heavy in the shalakadio, chaque negative and shalakadio, score heavy in the shalakadio, chaque negative and shalakadio, score heavy in the shalakadio, chaque negative and shalakadio, score heavy in the shalakadio, chaque negative and shalakadio, score heavy in the shalakadio, chaque negative and shalakadio, score heavy in the shalakadio, chaque negative and shalakadio, score heavy in the shalakadio.
camera's dark this time. Man, it just keeps messing with me. I'm going to take the mouse. You're good, Dan. Go ahead and swing on over to the table.
Okay.
I'm glad you're not evil. We're only heroic players here.
Wait, did you say that I'm not evil?
Yeah, are you saying you are?
Okay.
No, you said you could only play heroic characters. You didn't say anything about the players.
Yeah, that's a good point. Oh yeah, fix that camera, definitely.
Tell me if it's high enough.
Dude, it's not high.
It's high enough.
It's not high enough, dude. Yes, we're on the air. Sorry. Okay. Well, the camera just keeps going from one extreme to the other. It just keeps.
Is it too high?
Hang on a second. Nope. Here, you can see it now. I've got to get a decent mount for it. It's just not working with that little wedge thing. That's where we want it, right there.
There.
But it's going to jump. It's because you're standing on the green screen. That's part of it. Yeah,
Okay.
come have a seat. Hello and welcome to RPG Research. I'm your host, Hawk Robinson. Joining me today for our RPG theory discussion, we have...
John Wilker.
Apparently invisible at the moment. Where'd he go? Off camera.
There's not a camera on me, is there?
Oh, for crying out loud. Oh, the studio move. It will be wonderful when it's settled in. I'm sorry, John.
Hold on, I can fix this.
No, you won't, because I've got that all in the way.
It's just a matter of having this one,
No, but I don't like it doing that.
You don't want to share a window with it?
No, it's not that. It just... Anyway, go ahead and... Yeah, sorry, John. We'll get this dialed in eventually. We're in our newer studio location, and everything is in flux.
I mean, he has you hidden, but he has my head chopped off.
Be chopping heads.
Who do you think you are, the White Queen? No, the Red Queen.
No, it's the head cutting duel from Crossroads, the movie, with Ralph Macchio and the Karate Kid.
Yeah,
and Steve Vai. It was called Crossroads. It was a blues. It was kind of the story of a really famous blues player. Now I'm going to, of course, blank on his name. Who made? Everybody said he made a deal with the devil of the Crossroads for his fame as a guitar player, and so it's kind of based loosely on that, Delta blues and stuff. It's actually, the movie itself is cheesy, but it's mostly. The storyline is just interludes between some really awesome blues and heavy metal guitar, featuring Steve Vai, who I don't know if you know him from the 80s and 90s fame of heavy metal guitarist, lead guitarist. He's up there in fame with Yngwie Malmsteen and
I'd go
many others.
Years before I discovered the name of a band that I like.
Okay. and I was playing Led Zeppelin Over the Hills Far Away for 6 months before I could remember that was the name of the band and the name of the song.
Right.
I'm really bad with names. I can play the music. I often can't remember who it is. I know it's not mine. I know the difference between my music and someone else's.
I honestly
They're like, it's some band from the 70s. Led Zeppelin, yeah.
I didn't know Ralph Macchio did anything other than
Karate Kid?
Karate Kid.
Yeah, he didn't do well. But yeah, he's going around with a portable amp and guitar, and he wants to be, an awesome blues guitarist and stuff. And it actually wasn't that bad. I mean, it was cheesy in some ways, but as far as from a guitarist perspective, a lot of fun. Anyway, the big finale at the end, spoiler alerts from this 1980s movie, he goes up against the devil for his mentor's soul, and who the devil's guitarist is Steve Vai, right?
Oh.
Who's this incredible guitarist. But Macchio originally he's playing a character who started at Juilliard as a classical guitarist, who then kept trying to go into the blues. Like he'd be doing, an arpeggio classical thing, and then and then he'd go, woo, right at the end, and he's like, out of my class. The Juilliard's professors were not having this rebellion. You must play it this way. And so he realized that wasn't really the route after, that he wanted to go. He really wanted to master the blues. And guess, and you know, this actually is relevant to where I'm going to be in a month, a little over a month.
New Orleans.
Down in New Orleans.
New Orleans.
Delta blues and jazz. Oh, yeah. And wonderful food. It'll be great. Anyway, so total tangent. What?
Mhm.
What? Oh. Okay, interesting. Yeah, the total tangent. So we have been doing a series on activity analysis, and we started with doing a simple one with Drum Circle in preparation for doing a detailed activity analysis of role-playing games. And as all of our mics. Okay, never mind. I was worried they weren't on. It's just desktop audio if someone joins us remotely. I was worried.
Mic 4.
Oh, yes, thank you. And there you go. As I was concerned, the activity analysis forms that are out there floating around for occupational therapy, recreational therapy, and many others haven't really been through the ringer for empirical testing of reliability, validity, etc. And so I've been doing more and more research on that, and sure enough, that's what I'm seeing. I've only recently seen a few new papers popping up of people saying on ResearchGate and academia.edu and such, hey, all of these forms that people have been using for decades haven't been through validity and reliability testing. I'm like, yeah.
We noticed.
Been saying that for about 15 years, and it's what's in the textbooks. It's what everybody's being taught. And to worsen it, recreation therapists really aren't taught that much research. That's why I did an interdisciplinary degree in recreation therapy, music therapy, neuroscience, and research psychology so that I'd get a more well-rounded research background. And so...
Franken degree.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, as we went through the activity analysis, each person had really different scores. So it means there's a real problem with Now, the checklist parts work fine. Those had a really low error rate, between reliability of test retest. But it was the Likert scales that really are Likert apparently. They're not being used. They're not being used properly. They're supposed to be for subjective things, and this is much more relative things in physical environments, and it's just badly written as a survey. And so sure enough, as we had everybody go through the different ones, everybody's scores were wildly over the place. I mean, literally from 1 to 5 between different testers. That's basically useless.
Yeah.
So it's not that they are completely useless, because if the same person is using it to make the determination as to which activity works with these assessed individuals, and that person over time has seen that it's been effective that they understand it in a way that they make it work, it's not useless in that respect. But as far as industry standard professionalism and research, it's not consistent, reliable, or valid enough. It's especially the reliability that's the concern. The validity may not be that bad, but the reliability, test, retest, etc., is really bad. So I've been going through all of my research books trying to figure out better ways to improve it, so that we have a really good standardized activity analysis rating form. And I've been using this for years. And again, it works well enough for me. I can use the one that I've been using for years, and then look at a client assessment and make an accurate assessment of which activity belongs for this client. I can do that individually. But I want to make this a little more idiot-proof, people who aren't as well trained and who have that same knowledge, so that volunteers and others could actually go through this and be in the ballpark. I'm going to allow for a greater deviation in the error rate for people who aren't as well trained, but we want the way it's spelled out and used to be more consistent.
Right.
So some of the things that were inconsistent were just lack of training. Like some of the things that said, well, I did it because I thought this. And it was just lack of experience of all the other things to experience. Well, I can't do anything about that. But all the other areas where it was, well, it could be interpreted as this way or this way, 180 degrees, that's a phrasing issue that needs to be fixed. And then the gradients. And so there are areas that, based on the feedback, we've now done this 2 or 3 times, I've been overhauling it. And so some of the key changes are made here. Let me go ahead and let you guys see the paper version, and I'll pull up my soft copy here. So physical aspects the checklist is the same. That hasn't really changed. I fixed the typo for lower torso. Used to say lower trosso or something like that. The what is the amount of coordination, movement, etc. That's still currently a 5-point scale, but I'm probably going to change that to some other variant. I might keep it the same number of intervals, but I'm probably going to create it's a little. So one of the things the complaints was, well, it was kind of a 1.9, 2.0, like it wasn't quite a 2. So I went with the 2, but I really thought it was a 1, or really I thought it was a 1, even though, right? Because and some people said, well, I need more choices, and so you can go 7 or 9 or you go higher the numbers, but that tends to make assessments take longer and increase assessment taker fatigue, which then over time means as you go through the assessment, unless you break it up into sessions, tends to have a higher error rate as you progress through the document.
We also commented before that there wasn't the questions didn't give you what is average. So a lot of us had different views of what the average of...
Which, that's kind of a professional training issue.
Yeah.
So that is difficult, because again, I can go ahead and put examples for every single one, but that's considered bad form. So again, it's assumed you're a trained professional and you're supposed to know what the averages are in this particular type of form. If you have to list the example for every single one, then you probably have to rethink how you're doing it, which is again my point. The way they're doing this, I think, has to be rethought heavily. The checklists work. The others work. So these gradient decisions about how much coordination, little or much, things like that. I'm looking at other scales and measures that might be easier to grok, more consistently. So this is going to undergo significantly more overhaul, especially where these gradient scales are. But for the moment, let's just say we went ahead, because you'll see later I went to a 7-point instead of a 5-point, because people wanted more granularity in their choice. They said it was kind of in between, so that's one way to solve it. We can do it on a scale of 1 to 10, right? There's all sorts of different ways to skin this cat. I'm just trying to find the way that's going to have the best consistency. But I did go ahead and fix a lot of typos there. But the first page, there isn't a whole lot. Then you go to the second page. This is where I added a few between minimum recommended and maximum space required. So I added in, because before it was what was the space required for this activity? And that was problematic for a lot of people. They're like, well, is that the average? Is that the minimum? Is it the maximum? And generally the way this test is, again, if you read the cookbook, it tells you how you're supposed to answer these questions. But you guys, not knowing that, it's supposed to be what is the requirement for running this activity in the typical setting, non-therapeutic, non-adaptive, what is the average way it's usually done? And I did keep explaining that, but it wasn't sticking. So it doesn't hurt, though, to know what your minimum, maximum, and recommended ranges are. We talk about role-playing gaming all the time. Well, what's the minimum? Well, you could play by yourself, but really for it to be a social tabletop role-playing game, you need at least one other player. What's the maximum? Well, we don't recommend more than 6 players at the table. You can push it to 8, but you're really slowing the game down. I mean, I've done 20 plus at my table, but what are we going to say that we recommend? We're going to say minimum, 1 player, because you don't count the facilitator. Maximum 8 players or 6, depending on how strict you want to be. And the recommended is 4 or 5. So, and then in this case, it's space. So we're going to say, for that table space, we're going to want a table that seats, so it's going to say amount units per. So we're going to say, 1 room, 6-seat table is what we recommend. The minimum, you can sit on a couch, on a park bench, whatever. Maximum, any open environment. You can put whatever you want on that. But at least now you've got your ranges to help figure out, based on the resources I have available, is this activity going to work for the person we need and the resources we have available? You will now get a better answer from this activity form or the spreadsheet or software that you're using. The typical participant number size range, we got individual, pair, and small group. I think I added that. I don't think that was on the old one.
No, that
Yeah.
wasn't.
Yeah, I thought that was appropriate based on what we've been doing with Tuckman's discussions and others. I think that's useful. Small group, I could put 3 to 9. I just put 3 plus. Again, kind of assuming the training, but at least 3 plus. Minimum number of participants, recommended number of participants, maximum number of participants. We just talked about that. So all of those I added.
Okay.
And I think because of role-playing gaming, but really any activity, you should be asking these questions. And these, I think, we're going to be fairly consistent responses. I hope with you guys being trained, you're going to give consistent responses on these, at least in our area.
I don't know if I've gone through the entire packet yet, but is there a set where you have risk factors? Like sprain your wrist.
That's a whole other separate thing. There's a risk assessment form as its own form.
As an own separate form.
That's a separate form. That's not activity analysis. That is a risk assessment form.
Got it.
And that is part of being a TR is doing a risk assessment. Remember, we did that with the MBA and such. We have a whole separate risk assessment. That is a separate form. So you want to break these things into the smallest pieces that you can. Okay, so then go to page 3, social aspects. So the first part was already there, and that is the Avedon interaction patterns. Intra-individual, extra-individual, aggregate, inter-individual, unilateral, multilateral, intergroup, intergroup. Now I'm reiterating it because then I added the rest of this below based on play styles, based on the existing play style theories out there from various sources. And this includes Stuart Brown and others. And so you have play stages, and these generally parallel developmental stages of like being babies to little toddlers, etc. But they also just are stages of play that people go through developmentally in general. So unoccupied, where you're just sitting there watching the sky or the model turn or whatever. Independent, which is solitary play, where you're playing by yourself. Onlooker, you're watching others play. You're watching others do an activity, but it's some kind of activity or something that you're watching. Parallel play, you're doing activities side by side. So again, these parallel Avedon interaction patterns.
Right.
But we're talking specifically about play stages here, which are they're related to the Avedon interaction patterns, but when you use this terminology, it's a little bit different interpretation. Parallel play, as I said, associative play, and social play. So we've got a link there that if you're not sure what these terms mean, right? Because that was one of the things like, well, I don't know what associative play means, for example, right? So we go, and what do you think associative play means?
It's like we're all doing similar stuff, but not necessarily together.
No, that's parallel play.
That's parallel. Because I'm going to associate with you, obviously.
Yeah.
But that sounds like social to me.
Yeah, it's not as social, but it has gotten to that point where it's somewhat social. So associative play is when children around 3 to 4 years of age, they become more interested in other children than the toys. Children start socializing with other children. Associative play helps your child learn the do's and don'ts of getting along with other children. Children learn the art of sharing, language development, problem-solving skills, and cooperation. During associative play, children within the group have similar goals. However, they do not set rules, and there is no formal organization. Social play, children begin to share toys and ideas and follow established rules and guidelines and are beginning to use moral reasoning to develop a sense of values. That's the difference between associative and social play. The associative is you're now interacting with each other, finally, but it hasn't really been worked out in any formal dynamic yet. Social play is this is how we play together. See the difference? Mm-hmm. But you needed that information, right?
I did.
Yeah. That's all part of training, etc. So that's why the other thing I'm going to be doing is adding links for resources so that you get familiar with what the terminology means.
So we're going to be using an online form then?
That's ultimately the version I want anyway, because then I can automatically aggregate data, and it makes life a lot easier.
I tried clicking on it, nothing happened.
Yeah, funny that. Now, someday we'll have that electronic e-paper that'll work that way. Actually, you just print the sky, and
They claim they're getting there.
All right. So then we get into categories of play. So we got locomotor, aka physical, constructive, creative, building, creating. And I've got a few redundancies here later because I'm still weeding out these different lists from different sources. Expressive / symbolic. So constructive, creative play is, building stuff, buildings,
Legos.
Lincoln Logs, Legos, etc.
Minecraft.
And they can be creative stuff, but if you start getting into like expressive, symbolic play of, an abstract painting, yes, it's creative, but it's also expressive symbolic rather than constructive. So you could totally put, for abstract painting, constructive creative and expressive symbolic, and those would be perfectly appropriate. Because they're both. But building Legos is probably not expressive symbolic unless that's the goal of it, right? Creating some sort of abstract symbolic thing that, yes, it looks like a train, but it's meant to represent the socio-political climate of the 1920s era, whatever, whole other thing, then you would do it. So I'm still,
I've seen some abstract art with Legos.
You bet, of course. But generally, like, you're building the stuff, the goal is to build a robot.
Right.
Not to do some sort of expressive, symbolic thing. That's concrete versus abstract thinking stage. So again, you're focusing on what is the primary purpose of the activity. It can be both, or it might be just one or the other. I've got a typo in there for communication. So communication, word games, playing puns, associative games, the end of the last word to the next word, those chain games. Those are all just word games. You're not creative stuff. They're not locomotor, but they are very verbal games. That's a good one to have in there, don't you think? And again, I found these all from different sources who don't, this area of study needs a lot of improvement. There isn't a whole lot of agreement out there, and I'm trying to get, this together in a useful way. This is the beauty of trying to do both theoretical research and applying it in community settings, is it forces questions and answers to happen that other organizations, because they're doing it all on the theory side or on the application side, they're not interacting with each other most of the time.
Right.
And we do both, so it's just like what role-playing gaming does for derivative works. Like with Tolkien. Tolkien-based role-playing gaming, Other Minds Magazine and Other Hands Magazine, has created for scholars possible answers to a lot of scholarly questions that have come up because of practical reasons in the game that you have to answer that nobody thought to ask until it came up in the game.
Right.
Because of the practical things that come up in the game. And so it creates this wonderful feedback loop that kind of helps inform each other. So fantasy/dramatics is a subsection, and under that we have socio-dramatic, where you have a performance in a social setting. Fantasy is where you're just making stuff up that is a fantasy of some sort, and it's different here. You're making the fantasy of kind of an existing world or a variation. It might be a magical variation of this world, but it's kind of relative to what we understand. It's a fantasy of a setting. Versus imaginative, you can make up anything. The physics don't apply. Everything's completely different. No thank you evil, stuff like that is much more imaginative play. D&D is much more fantasy play. We've got a lot of real world similarities to D&D compared to
fantasy is
no
more
thank you
derivative.
Sure, yeah. Imaginative is more original, yeah. Then you got costumed versions versus not costumed, right? Do they need to wear costumes or not? And do they do role play? Are they taking on a role? So those are, again, this is an early draft. It'll go through many iterations. And then does it go deep? Does it cover deep topics? That's the next page down. There's a little check mark for deep. Does it go into deep stuff?
Am I missing on page 4? That's not supposed there.
Where's page 4? Oh,
Looking.
maybe it's out of order.
Well, these are all like this release forms now.
What happened to the rest?
There's page 5.
Oh, he's got it flipped over on the booklet, maybe.
Oh,
No?
It's right there. It
Okay.
just had.
Oh, it just got mixed in.
There we go.
Okay. So deep is going into deep stuff, like deep emotional, difficult topics and such. You would see that with vampire. I would put deep on vampire or World of Darkness roleplay. You might not see that so much with No Thank You Evil generally. It could happen, but
I can make it happen.
you're probably not going to see it with Munchkin. Again, you can make any of these happen, but in general, we're talking in general here. Okay, so then back to the rest of the list. Cooperative versus competitive. Destructive, like do you destroy things? There are activities where that is your task, to destroy things. And they can be really rewarding.
Like skeet.
Sure, skeet. I was just thinking actually blowing things up, which I've done and had a lot of fun with.
A competitive explosive play.
It doesn't have to be competitive. That's a separate category. It can be cooperative destructive. It can be independent destructive. This is just, does it have destructiveness in it? Which isn't always a bad thing.
What is those things where the cars go around the track and beat on each other?
What's that?
Construction? Derby.
Demolition derby?
Demolition derby. Yeah, that's the word.
Yeah, it would be destructive. And a lot of fun. Combative now is you're actually fighting each other, right? Destructive is you're destroying things or whatever. Combative is you're actually having combat with each other. Exploratory, right? That you have to explore stuff. Problem solving, you have to solve puzzles and riddles and such. Virtual digital, so it's not in the physical world, it's in some digital environment that you're participating. Is it active participation, right? Do you need to be actively engaged versus not?
Are you just watching or are you playing?
Exactly. Imitation. Are you supposed to imitate things? Are you supposed to make animal sounds or pretend to be somebody else that you're watching, etc.? Rough and tumble. It's not fighting. Rough and tumble is roughhousing, wrestling for fun. You're not really fighting each other. Tickle fights, for example,
Rugby.
is in the list. No, that would be that would be that would not be. That's way beyond rough and tumble. We are talking like playing around on the ground, doing tickle fights and stuff like that. Is what rough and tumble means.
Pillow fights.
Remember, a lot of this is kind of applying to children's phases and such.
All right.
Is there an object involved in the process? And then recapitulative or ritual. Are you doing these activities as part of either learning or emulating a long-term ritual as part of your culture or some other thing, but is directly related to some kind of ritual, and you are doing this activity related to a ritual in that way?
Like the Mayan ball game.
Right. Yeah, or the jumping off the high-rise thing with head first into this pile of sand that some African tribes do, or they tie a vine. They're still trying to do it. It's part of the rite of passage for manhood. They tie a vine to their leg and go up on this 20-30 foot platform and jump head first into a pile of sand, built up dirt. That's part of their rite of passage. I forget the name of the tribe that does that, but
they invented the bungee cord.
Yeah, I thought that was Aboriginal. I thought that was something else. Did they? I don't.
I mean, it's very similar to.
Yeah, I thought it was something
with
else.
a little
I could be
less
wrong.
spring to it than you know.
Yeah. And then getting into, now this is where we come back to archetypes. So this is straight out of Stuart Brown's play, pages 65 to 70. And maybe we could talk about it because this is great because we talk about archetypes. This is play personality, which he also says archetype. So which play personalities are most likely to enjoy participation in this activity? He lists 8. Again, we've got up close to 20. We're still trying to figure all that out. Joker, kinesthete, explorer, competitor, director, collector, and artist/creator. And
Kinesthete.
What's that?
I need kinesthete.
That's based on kinesthesia. So somebody likes to do really physical stuff. But so let's go ahead and read through those. I got to go grab the book. It doesn't seem to be here.
Directly behind you on top of the miniatures is where I put a lot of the research stuff. I was trying to clear a space for you to sit down.
Yep. Okay.
Because you literally could not sit in your chair.
I'm sorry. All right.
I'm going to be using some.
And he's the first one to say, and again, this is the problem in this area of study, but it's also the opportunity, that research and good science has been lacking, and it's necessary. This whole book is about how critical play is to your mental and physical health and social health and all of it. That without, in fact, there's a couple of lines I've always highlighted. I've got a lot of lines highlighted in here, but some really great ones are: when play is denied over the long term, our mood darkens. We lose our sense of optimism and we become anhedonic, which means we don't seek pleasure, so the opposite of pleasure seeking, or incapable of feeling sustained pleasure. And this is, there is research supporting all that. I mean, that stuff's well researched. Let's see. There's a couple of really good ones I wanted to highlight. Talks about the difference between dogs and wolves. And part of it is that dogs keep playing, so they kind of keep developing, whereas wolves stop developing.
So if you teach your wolf to play more, he'd be a dog?
That's how wolves became dogs over thousands of years. Where? I need to put Post-its in here.
I haven't seen Alpha yet.
Huh?
Alpha.
It's a movie about the first dog.
Oh, I've not seen that either.
I think it was only last year. Could have been even this year. It's not that old.
Okay, here's the play personality types. Okay, if we stop playing, we share the fate of all animals that grow out of play. Our behavior becomes fixed. When we stop playing, we stop developing. I mean, and research supports this. So anyway, this is why it's important. So, for example, one of our researchers comes from a culture, Eastern European culture, where the work ethic is, if you're not working or studying for work and such, if you're playing or doing leisure, you're a slacker and you should never do that. You should always be working. And a lot of cultures have that. And that has real consequences. I mean, you can look at the Japanese culture. Now, Japanese culture, they let you be a kid when they're little. The kids play like they're all over you. They're kind of stinkers because they don't discipline them much, because they like, hey, let them be kids, because after this, it's all gone, right? It's all work after a certain point, and the suicide rate is through the roof, in Japan. These are real consequences. So that's why it's important to just point out to people like, no, play is not only nice and for a better quality of life, it's critical. It's not nice to have. It's mandatory for functioning and development and growth, and for your being well balanced. Without it, you are unbalanced, and a lot of people don't understand that. And the research, more and more neuroscience and everything supports that it is a critical part of your balance, and without it, your life is not balanced. So, just important to know. Of course, we need to eat our own dog food on that, and we do. We actually do. We do a lot of research, and we're working a lot, and we get to play during the work too, which we get to have fun, right? We get to enjoy it, and it helps with it. We grow from it. We grow from the experiences. All right, so this list, he states very clearly that these 8 types is not scientifically based, but he's found them generally to be accurate. So it's his play personality type, and he calls them archetypes as well, briefly. So the Joker. The most basic and extreme player throughout history is the Joker. A Joker's play always revolves around some kind of nonsense. Indeed, nonsense is the first type of human play we engage in. All baby talk begins with nonsense. Parents make infants laugh by making silly sounds, blowing raspberries, and generally being foolish. Later, the class clown finds social acceptance by making other people laugh. Adult jokers carry on that social strategy, though. George Clooney is a notorious practical joker. On the set of Ocean's 12 and Ocean's 13, he and fellow actor Matt Damon reportedly would try to outdo each other with their practical jokes. My dentist John Lauer also qualifies for this designation. As the dental chair reclines, his patients see a large ceiling sign that says, "The dentist tells the jokes." And inevitably, he has a new one on the tip of his tongue, because you're a little occupied. All right, the kinesthete. Kinesthetes are people who like to move, who, in the words of Sir Ken Robinson, need to move in order to think. This category includes athletes, but also others like Gillian Lynn, who find themselves happiest moving as part of dance, swimming, or walking. Kinesthetes naturally want to push their bodies and feel the result. They may be those who do football, yoga, dance, or jump rope. While kinesthetes may play games, competition is not the main focus. It is only a forum for engaging in their favorite activity. A friend of mine has a daughter who is a gifted young gymnast. Her academic parents became concerned over the difficulties she had in reading comprehension. Her mother, however, noticed that she could concentrate on tasks when she was bouncing on a large inflated ball. So her mother began to have reading lessons with her as she sat moving on the ball. The daughter's reading ability and skill at retaining information has been improving consistently. She will likely never choose to become a librarian, but her sense of failure at reading has vanished. And you've seen, you talk about the fidget spinners.
Yep.
And we see, and this is known with little kids, it takes more cognitive energy for them to sit still than to be wiggle bottoms. They do better and they can focus longer if they're allowed to be physical. They can't sit. It takes more effort for them to hold still.
Right.
They have to exert mental energy to sit still. That's why we incorporate for our younger kids physical, some sort of moving, and we don't worry if they get up from their chair and wiggle and do stuff. That's perfectly appropriate for them. It generally helps them stay more engaged in the game versus no, don't move, which is what they get all day long in school too, which isn't good for them. Comments so far?
Nope.
Dan?
I'm comprehending.
Audience? Well, but even just any thoughts that occur to you. It's not just about comprehension, just if it triggers any interesting anecdotes or thoughts. The Explorer. Each of us started our lives by exploring the world around us. Some people never lose their enthusiasm for it. Exploration becomes their preferred avenue into the alternative universe of play. Their way of remaining creative and provoking the imagination. Think Richard Branson or Jane Goodall. Exploring can be physical, literally, going to new places. Alternatively, it can be emotional, searching for a new feeling or deepening of the familiar through music, movement, flirtation. It can be mental, researching a new subject or discovering new experiences and points of view while remaining in your armchair, which is, of course, a big part of what we do in role-playing gaming as well. Yeah. And you'll hear, parallels to this to like Bartle's taxonomy of player types and other player types. You're going to hear overlaps in all of these, as you should. The competitor. The competitor is a person who breaks through into the euphoria and creativity of play by enjoying a competitive game with specific rules and enjoys playing to win. They're the Terminator. They're the Dominator. The competitor loves fighting to be number one. If
Card
games...
floppers.
What's that?
Card floppers.
If games and keeping score are your thing, this may be your primary play personality. The games can be solitary or social, either a solitary video game or a team game like baseball, and they may be actively participated in or observed as a fan. Competitors make themselves known in social groups where the fun comes from being the top person in the group or in business in which money or perks serve to keep score. My middle son has always been so competitive. Just always. And maybe the part of that's middle child syndrome. Mm-hmm. And the other two, not so much. But they do compete with each other. But the middle one, everything is a competition for him with everybody, including me. Right? He's like, am I making more than you did, Dad? Am I making more than you did? Like, God, enough, kiddo. And I am not. I have never been a competitive person. I am a very driven person. I've always wanted to try to do the best at whatever I do, but it was never at the cost or in comparison to others that I was trying to do it. It was I set specific goals and I needed to overcome the challenge. So there's that mountain.
Right.
I got to go climb that mountain. I don't care if nobody's been on that mountain or 1,000 people have been at that mountain. For me, it's the personal challenge of climbing that mountain. Can I make it? Can I do it in this amount of time? Can I do it with 70 pounds in my pack or nothing? Whatever. It's my own personal challenge, and that's how I've been my whole life, is pushing myself through these challenges. But it's never been competition. I don't find rewarding at all. I played basketball and many sports for years, and I had fun with the activity. Didn't really care if it was win or lose. Really,
right? Didn't
matter if it was a good game and we lost. I was fine. I was not. My friend, other players might be crestfallen. I was like, oh, that was such a good game. Thank you. Whoever beat us, they're like, that was an awesome game. Way to go, man. Right? It doesn't bother me at all if it was a good game. If we did a crappy game, then I feel bad about, how crappy a job I did if I did a crappy job. And when I was younger, I beat myself up pretty hard if I didn't, I was like, oh, man, I should have gotten that. But it wasn't about the competition. My middle son, oh, my goodness, it's all about the competition. And there's a lot of people like that, right? It's a very big difference. And then there's those are two extremes. There's a whole spectrum in between. Comments on any of that?
I'm partially competitive. I don't mind losing as long as I learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
And I at least did a good showing.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to like, oh, the score is 27-1. Yay. But if I at least, 27-20,
mm-hmm.
I don't mind. And especially if I learn, I can do this better next time.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I always sparred with black belts.
Okay.
Cool. I knew I was going to lose.
Yeah, there's when I raced a lot. I souped up cars and stuff, but I remember there was a quad turbo Maserati at a light, and I had my souped up truck, And I knew there was no way. Power to weight ratio, acceleration, I knew there was not even a chance that I would smoke this guy, right? And normally my truck would smoke a lot of people.
Right.
But this one, tiny little car, probably 400 plus horsepower with no weight, it was going to just smoke me off the line. And it did. It was literally, the light changed. So this was where there was a freeway going this way. I'm at the light. Freeway going this way, overhead. There's a light right past it, right? The other ramp there. And then there's a light at the railroad tracks, and then a light clear down there. That's about a mile away at that point. So the light changes. I take my foot off. I'm power braking. I take my foot off the brake. Pedal's already to the floor. Start to accelerate. He's already at that next light by the time my truck's starting to move. Just right. By the time I got to that light, he's at the railroad tracks, and that's like exponentially more distance.
Right.
By the time I got to the railroad tracks, he was already through that next light. Right. Each time it was an exponentially longer distance, and I was just like, "That's so awesome." I knew. I just wanted to see how fast he could go. I knew there was no chance of me beating him, and it didn't matter. So then later I caught up to him and stopped and rolled down the window, and he powered his down. And I was like, "Thank you! That was awesome! I just wanted to see how fast your car was." And he just kind of smiled and was like a little perplexed, but yeah. Other people were like, "Man, why did you..."
You weren't racing for pink slips.
No. Well, yeah, I did do that sometimes, but I preferred not to. It was just for the fun of it. And to be challenged, and it does help push you to do better. So I would do it to push myself to be better, right? It does help you. If you're drafting somebody running or racing or whatever, it can kind of push you to do a little more, and it gives you a gauging of where you are. So for that respect, it's useful. But again, for me, it wasn't. It's just a different attitude. It's just a totally different attitude than a lot of people have. And there were plenty of times I won too, but unfortunately, middle son's not the best sport about winning or losing too. So that's an issue I tried to work on a little bit. Like, he really rubs it in when he wins, and he gets pretty darn upset when he loses. It's like, come on, be a good sport about it. Congratulate the person and have a good attitude. He's getting better at it though. Now he's an adult. Luckily, he's not watching this.
No, this will be the only time you ever watch this.
Hey, Nicholas.
Hey.
Meeting?
The media server is just struggling with
Even just booting up, it won't even boot up.
it just hangs on the loading,
Okay.
so I can't even get the memory test. So I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. I'll have to. We'll delve into it deeper tomorrow when I can actually pay full attention on it. Because I really want to get that box back up and running. Probably what we got to do is we probably got to strip it down, like disconnect a lot of stuff, and then just add stuff till we figure out. Because it's been so long, it's been like 2 years since I worked on it. I just can't remember what its situation is. But we'll get it there. Besides that hardware, the next big urgency, of course, is I want to get the IRC working so we can use that to chat and share stuff. But we really need to get that email. Brooke has started your background check today, so it'll probably be in tomorrow. And then I'll be able to start setting you up with access to help admin stuff. So we'll probably go over a lot of that tomorrow. We may fiddle with the computer stuff here, but we may end up spending our time on that. We'll just see what happens. Thank you so much for everything. It's really helping a lot for everything. And I hope you're learning.
Learning how to swap CDs or
Yeah, well, but I mean, all these different hardware things, and yeah, I know some of it's old, but you're going to run into a lot of different types of hardware, and having been exposed to these now is going to make it a lot easier as different things come across your path. It's going to be a lot less alien than your peers. A lot of your peers who don't get exposed to these things are like, what the heck does this mean? And what is that? And you go, oh yeah, it's this and this and this and this and this, because you'll have had some exposure to it. That's the one thing with all how nice the computers are now, how easy they are, is when something goes wrong, you don't know what's under the hood to fix it, right? You just, because you haven't been exposed to it. Getting exposed to these being more manual and under the hood, it's easier to then troubleshoot when it breaks at the higher layer. Go, oh, well, that's probably one of the memory chips going bad.
Not using reel-to-reel.
So, what's that?
So at least you're not using reel-to-reel or punch cards.
Yeah, anymore. Anymore. It's when I started in the 70s, so yeah.
bunch of cards that still.
All right, well, thank you so much, and I'll see you tomorrow after 12-ish.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. See you then. All right. The director. Directors enjoy planning and executing scenes and events. Though many are unconscious of their motives and style of operating, they love the power even when they're playing in the B-movie league. They are born organizers. What's that?
Dungeon Master.
Yeah. At their best, they are the party givers, the instigators of great excursions to the beach, the dynamic center of the social world. At worst, they are manipulators. All the world's a stage, and the rest of us are only players in the director's game. Good examples of this category are Barefoot Contessa chef Ina Garten and Oprah Winfrey.
Okay, so that.
Comments?
Dungeon Master.
Yeah.
On both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. The other ones being the control freaks that Robin's laws of good game mastering, he assumes all GMs are, and I couldn't.
I think it's just the bear talking back to him.
That is him projecting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dan, you have any comments?
Nothing so far.
Okay. The Collector. What good is a world of random objects? The thrill of play for the collector is to have and to hold the most, the best, and the most interesting collection of objects or experiences. Coins, toy trains, antiques, plastic purses, wine, shoes, ties, video clips of race car crashes, or pieces of the crashed cars themselves. Anything and everything is fair game for the collector. One person I know travels the world to see solar eclipses, which might seem like the action of an explorer, except that he has to see every single one and methodically collects evidence of each eclipse. Collectors may enjoy collecting as a solitary activity, or they may find it the focus of an intense social connection with others who have similar obsessions. Jay Leno is famous for his car collection.
Yeah.
Collecting cars and working on them is what he does in his free time to play, which it's awesome. He has an awesome collection.
Okay. Miniatures, obviously.
Yep.
And the guy who's collecting eclipses is rich.
To be able to travel. Not necessarily. There's plenty of bums who can still pull that off. They just...
When you have more than you need, you're rich. That's the definition.
Okay.
There's not oh, I'm a millionaire versus a gazillionaire. It's you have more than you need, you're rich. He is rich.
Yeah.
What collections? A tiny one.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm not really a collector though. Like I don't collect for collection's sake.
Right.
I collect as a so for me collecting is not the means to is not the end. It is the means to another end. So for collectors, the collecting is the means to the end, right? Having the collection. For me, the collection is the enabling of doing things, because I am very much a doer.
Like D&D minis. They're not there just to sit on the shelf. They're to be used.
Exactly. And a lot of people are like, oh, you're ruining. Why don't you keep it in the plastic? Like, why don't you keep the plastic on your furniture then? I like to not have plastic on my furniture and sit and enjoy it. Same thing with the books and modules and stuff. And it might be a while. I might go years or decades between using them, as we've seen, right?
Yes.
I have stuff I haven't used in decades, but then I use it.
Mm-hmm.
I do.
He doesn't want every edition, Dungeons and Dragons edition starter set just to fill up shelf space.
Correct. It is for us to evaluate which is the best one for us to use to help people in the most efficacious way. So it is a means, it's not the end to itself, but a collector, it would be the end to itself. That's why I don't call myself a collector. Yeah, I've got a lot of stuff. It looks like a collection. It is a collection. I'm not a collector. You know, unless you argued for the explorer of the experiences, all the new experiences, that would I definitely explore. Yeah, I'm definitely the explorer among others.
So would you say curator?
No, because
You're curating for a purpose.
I thought curators were more snobbish and picky. And that's my perception.
That
of a
is
curator.
A stereotype.
I know.
That's not even an archetype. That's a stereotype.
But a keeper custodian of a museum or other collection, a person who selects acts to perform a musical. Let's see. I'm trying to see what the literal. One in charge of a museum, zoo, care, superintendence of something. That's not very helpful.
Try looking up with curate. because a curator is someone who curates.
Person who selects content for presentation as on a website, a manager, superintendent. In law, a guardian of a minor, lunatic, or other incompetent, especially with regard to his or her property.
That's a curator?
Yes, in law.
What?
But yeah, see, these are all very specific roles, not a more general application that you were trying to put there. That's why I have this association. Yeah. I follow that association pretty literally.
Well, the association that you are a curated collection is a collection that is put together for a purpose. For example, I'm curating the best 1970s music.
Well, we are curating the research on our website. Like all the research we find, we're trying to create curated lists to help make it easier for people to find the topics they're looking for. So those are curated. This isn't organized that way. I'm too ADHD to be a good curator. Right. There's definitely an impulse aspect to some of them. Some of them are well planned, and others are definitely shiny.
Yeah, I see a couple of impulse plays there.
No, couldn't be. That was sarcasm. Yeah. The artist/creator. For the artist/creator, joy is found in making things. Painting, printmaking, woodworking, pottery, and sculpture are well-known activities of artists and creators, but furniture making, knitting, sewing, and gardening are also in their purview. Artists, creators may end up showing their creations to the world and even selling them for millions, or may never show anyone what they make. The point is to make something, or to make something beautiful, something functional, something goofy, or just to make something work. The artist, creator, may be someone who enjoys taking apart a pump, replacing broken parts, cleaning it, and putting back together a shiny, perfectly working mechanism, in effect making it anew. It may mean decorating a room or a house. British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher enjoyed wallpapering in her free time. Matisse experimented with many different forms of fine art in his career, from oil paints and pastels to paper cutouts and stained glass windows. So, Dan, you're a professional artist for a living. Do you think that applies in the rest of your life as well?
Yes.
Okay.
If I can create, if I can get my hands in on it and produce something, then I gain a certain level of satisfaction. Although I know that instead of selling for millions, I've found that a number of those people who do it for galleries, it's more of a social scene than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm seeing where there could be people that are combination. For
example,
example,
I mean, I'm a combination of most of these.
Yeah.
A clown would be a kinesthetic joker.
Yeah.
A football team captain would be a competitive director.
Mm-hmm. And that's totally okay.
Yeah.
Right? Because those combinations are what you want to look for when you're matching your client's needs and goals and such. So role-playing, you can select all of those.
Yeah.
We're not done yet, though. Storyteller.
Not on this list, by the way.
It's not?
Nope.
You ended artist-creator.
Oops. I must have... I think
You fell asleep.
No, I think somebody came to the door right then.
Broke your chain of thought.
Because that's kind of critical.
Mm-hmm.
Let me save another revision here.
Yep, you just missed one.
Yeah, I think literally someone came to my door right then. Let's see. 0527F. All right. For the storyteller, the imagination is the key to the kingdom of play. Storytellers are, of course, novelists, playwrights, cartoonists, and screenwriters, but they are also those whose greatest joy is reading those novels and watching those movies, people who make themselves part of the story, who experience the thoughts and emotions of characters in the story. Performers of all sorts are storytellers, creating an imaginative world through dance, acting, magic tricks, or lectures. Because the realm of the storyteller is in the imagination, they can bring play to almost any activity. They may be playing a recreational game of tennis, but in their mind, each point is part of an exciting drama. The pressure is really on Roger Federer now. He really has to make this point to save the set. It's in quotes. In contrast to the competitor, the storyteller's main point of the game is to have an exciting match. Even cooking macaroni and cheese can be transformed through imagination into a worldwide telecast celebrity cook-off. Garrison Keillor and Bob Costas are two examples of natural-born storytellers. And, of course, Dungeon Masters.
Yeah.
So we have a director, artist, collector, storyteller, dungeon master.
Yeah. So,
And if it's LARPing, kind of
Yeah.
if it's LARPing, it's all of them, potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of dungeon masters are definitely jokers.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Just think about how many games you've been in where almost always at least one Monty Python quote slips in. At least. Or Princess Bride or many others.
I'm reminded of the meme where it's like, where D&D games begin, and it's like, Lord of the Rings and the Fellowship, and where it ends, Monty Python, Holy Grail.
So anyway, that's the information there. So let's continue on with this document. So again, that's still a work in progress. We'll keep working on it, but you can see how I'm adding these things in that seem to be more relevant to role playing, but they would still apply to all other activities.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just amazing. I cannot find an assessment form that is thinking this robustly.
Right.
And I don't know what it is. And I've been looking high and low trying to find one. And this is going to have to go through a lot of testing before it is reliable and valid, unfortunately. But we will try to do that. So then we have this was before what's the number of participants required, and it changed it from that to what is the minimum, fewest number, or maximum, greatest number of people required for the activity. So you get minimum number and maximum number. So it's a little redundant from the physical environment one. And so that may need to be removed as a redundancy, but you get the idea. And then put in recommended, right? So again, I'm still sticking all these, and then we'll figure out where the best placement is, just making sure that they get captured. What clothing, that's the same, but I phrased it to be socially appropriate, because before it just said what clothing's necessary or something, and
right.
people had issues with that.
Naked.
Yeah, people just started like, okay. Physical proximity, you'll see here I put in a 7-point scale because people wanted more granularity. Again, I'm not sure that is going to help at all. I think it's going to be how I need to change all of these to something else to be more effective, I think, to more consistent. And you'll notice on the next page, well, actually, okay, so you saw, I also broke it into physical proximity between participants and separately physical contact between participants, right? Mm-hmm. There's space and then there's contact. Well, and then the next one is verbal communication required versus degree of nonverbal communication required. A typo in there to fix. What
activity?
Yeah. So you got verbal versus nonverbal. How much is needed for the activity? Now, some games, you may be able to pick up all kinds of nonverbal activity, but they're not necessary. You can play poker without requiring nonverbal interaction with poker. You can totally play a computer game version that's all verbal, whatever. You don't have to have body language, etc. All those things may help you play better, but they're not required to do the activity. What degree of noise is generated by the activity? Everybody, that one was an easy one with the drumming.
Yeah.
Everybody put that at the top of the scale
Poker's
consistently.
a 1, and
but other things will get a little trickier, like tabletop role playing. Where would you put that on a scale of 1 to 7?
7 now.
For this,
4.
Average 4.
Oh, geez. Windows is trying to reboot our broadcast computer. No, that's the other computer. Never mind. Phew. Phew. Do you see that? It's getting ready to reboot. I was like, no! I thought I hacked all that away. That's the other computer. Okay. Phew.
Don't scare me like that. We didn't have technical problems. We wouldn't have problems.
Okay. Cognitive so anyway, where would you put that on scale of 1 to 7 for noise?
You
For
said
tabletop.
4.
You said 4?
Yeah, average.
Okay.
There's constant. There's supposedly a lot of constant conversation.
Yeah.
Going on.
You don't think it ever gets really loud?
It can.
Now remember, you said typical. A typical game is one group of people. When I think aloud, I'm thinking a convention floor,
Okay.
which is not the typical setting.
You don't think there's whoops and cheers and yeah, we got it, even just once in the
That's
game?
a spike.
Yeah. What degree of noise is generated by the activity?
During the average use of the activity.
Okay. I will tell you from experience that you need to have a place that will allow you to make a little bit more noise,
Yeah.
because quieter places won't allow you to do tabletop games. If that's always the case. I've literally had to shush groups like, guys, we have to play quietly all the time, and it's almost impossible.
So 5 or 6?
I would definitely put it in the 5. It's certainly not 7,
Yeah.
but I would at least put it slightly above average. Like playing a game of fish, short of, a sore loser or sore winner type being obnoxious. In general, you don't see a lot of that cheering. Most of the games I've seen, you get that. There will almost always be somebody cheering at least once during the game. And often, if it's going well, the whole group. And that makes a lot of noise. It may only be one spike for the whole game, but if you're doing the game right, that's always going to happen.
Okay.
So I would definitely put it at least one notch above average, just because of that. The rest of the time, yeah, it doesn't need to be louder, unless it's conventions. I agree with you totally. But it's that spike that goes, you need it to be somewhere that allows for the occasional loudness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. Somebody gets into like, I go get him, whatever. It happens. I mean, unless you ever really, unless the group's really just there are groups like that, and they're perfectly happy that way.
That's what we get for inviting a sousaphone to your game.
Wah, wah.
It's a sousaphone.
Yeah.
Oh.
I was thinking more peanuts, but
Well, there's a cartoon showing that the teacher from the Peanuts Gallery
was a
Peanuts.
Yeah.
Peanuts.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
He said it.
Okay.
He said it. Just slight speech impediment made it sound different, but he did say the correct word.
Hey,
We're not picking
you're not
you
allowed
on
to
it.
make fun of my speech.
We're not making fun of it. I'm just making clear that don't censor us because he didn't say anything wrong. Anyway, cognitive aspects. So pretty much the same initially. Rules, complexity of the rules, etc. At least I'm pretty sure that was already there.
What degree of hard thinking?
I might have. Did I add that earlier? The rules and complexity of the rules? I can't remember now. Oh well.
No, I think that was on the original.
Okay, good. I thought so. All right, then as we scroll down.
Well, no, wait. What's new? I think how many rules are required is different.
new. Yeah.
Yeah.
Versus complexity. As I said, I think I added one
Yeah.
to clarify better. Played around with the long-term memory. Oh, complexity and scoring.
Mm-hmm.
Forward-thinking strategy. I rephrased that because I just said strategy before, and so I had to be more specific. Degree of long-term memory versus what degree of short-term memory or immediate recall. Kind of spelled those out more accurately. Degree of verbalization of thought processes required in the activity, because before it was degree of verbalization, spelling it out in more detail. Concentration, concrete thinking, I'm pretty sure I added that. And abstract thinking, I think I added that.
No, those were there before.
You sure?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure abstract thinking was in there.
Both concrete and abstract were in there.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I added that in the previous. These are not in the original in the textbook.
Oh,
yeah.
We can only tell you what was on the original.
Okay, yeah. What's the maximum or minimum requirement for improvisation? I just added this. Improvisation required during the activity versus the maximum opportunity for improvisation required during the activity. So role-playing gaming...
There's no scale for that, by the way.
I know.
Okay.
I'm not that far along on that.
All right.
I stuck it in there, and I'll worry about the scale later. But yeah, I definitely recently added those. And, role-playing gaming does have a minimum requirement for some improvisation for changing circumstances.
Yeah.
The maximum opportunity is peg the needle, right? You can improvise the heck out of it. Again, it's opportunity. It's not required, but that is...
the ultimate sandbox.
It is totally. But it's going to be more than a 1 on the minimum requirement. Other games are not necessarily really going to require improvisation. They're going to be very rigid rules. Playing a chess game, you've got a limited set of rules, and it's constantly trying to figure out those rules, but you're not improvising You can't, go, oh, I think I'm going to weld a pawn and a knight together to modify the move to try to solve this particular problem, right? That's not how the game is played. You have a very rigid set of moves. You don't get to really improvise. You could say, well, I was playing this style and I changed it to this style in response to his style. That's still not improvisation the way, right? So it's going to be at least it's still going to be at least a 2 for improvisation required to participate in a role-playing game. That's generally going to be the case. Mm-hmm. Then this is what I added earlier: the dependence on random chance results generators required. They did not have that in there at all, and some
really
games
not
do.
A lot of activities that require random generation of the number. I mean, bingo,
roulette.
Well, I mean, I said there
right,
there.
Yeah,
bingo,
they are exactly.
They exist.
Right, and so you should, as an activity, account for whether it's there or not, because they're going to come and go, and yeah, maybe many games you'll just put a 1. There's none, and that's fine.
Technically, card games require random generation of a random card that I get.
Yeah, it would not be a 1 because that is a random generator. You bet. Playing basketball, though there's lots of random events, there's no random generator being used at all.
And now, substituting for the forward is a pig. Okay, here we go, folks.
That would be a fun game. I might actually watch sports then. The next section 12, no difference. 13-14 added understanding nonverbal communication versus expressing nonverbal communication. Mm-hmm. So I broke those into 2 different, receiving and sending, which I thought was good.
Express 1. Yeah. Understanding 5.
Yes.
It's not required. That's for mastery.
True.
To play it, you can have none. You're just probably not going to do a very good job. Unless you're a really good card counter. Unless you're a really good card counter. 15, what degree does the participant need to identify or use the following? So we got form and shape, colors, size, numbers, body parts. So I added symbol recognition, object recognition, spatial relations, and orientation to direction, because some of the other terminology was tripping everybody up. Yeah. So I broke those into separate terms that are more distinctive. Now, some of them may end up all being the same answer much of the time, but there will be times that those will have a variant. Mm-hmm. Then affective aspects. To what degree does the participant need to be able to express the following for the activity? To what degree does the activity provide opportunities to express the following? So I haven't put in joy, guilt, pain, anger, fear. What? Yeah, from earlier?
Yeah, degree of participation needs to identify. Would distance be size as well?
That's spatial relations.
Oh, there. Okay, got it.
That's the distance of one thing to another.
Thank you.
Okay. So affective. Now, I haven't put the joy, guilt, pain, anger, fear, frustration under each of these ideas, but just imagine as you scroll down, you see those are there. Yeah. They're under every one of these questions each time. So to what degree does the participant need to be able to express the following for the activity? So do they need to be able to express it to do the activity? A lot of times that'll be a 1. They don't need to do it. Some, it will be necessary, right? It will be necessary to show joy, to show guilt, to show pain, to show anger, whatever, as part of the activity.
Verbalizing it.
Right.
My character is angry.
Well,
very, very
you need to be able to express it, and it might be you could express it verbally, but that you need to be able to express that emotion. Okay. To what degree does the activity provide opportunities to express fine? So first, how much do you need to, versus opportunities to do so? Some activities might be completely inappropriate to express any of your emotions and such. Poker,
right?
Unless you're doing it to intentionally throw people off. What's the minimum intensity of expressing the following required by the participant for the activity? So that might be a little redundant from the first one. To what degree? That might be redundant. So I need to work on between those. So those two go together, and I'll work on making sure the phrasing's right. And then what's the maximum intensity required by the participant for the activity? Again, required. So, maybe it's got a minimum range and then kind of a maximum range that you kind of have to be in this window to be able to do this activity. If you're flat the whole time, you're not going to be able to do the activity successfully. So I'm having trouble thinking of it off the top of my head, but it seems theoretically possible.
Yeah, maximum intensity of expressing the following required, that you are required to express anger, fear, or frustration, or pain or guilt.
Certain LARPs, certain LARPs, you need to be able to express that, even if it's faux emotion.
But for most
it.
activities, you would hope the answer is no.
Yeah. Administrative aspects. So we got leadership, equipment, type of facility, duration, recommended minimum duration, recommended maximum duration without a break. So these are all ones I've added. Recommended duration between breaks. Recommended maximum duration with breaks for the activity. So that's like if we're doing a gaming session for 3 hours.
Skip environment?
Did I?
Yeah.
Environment.
Specific environments.
Oh, you got the wrong one.
You got the wrong page.
What type of facility is required by the
Administrative
activity?
aspects.
Specific natural environment, specific created environment, no specific environment required.
That is under what type of facility is required?
keep going down.
Then what's the average duration of activity?
And
we went
below that.
Well, I know where we're at.
Okay.
Thing. I thought we did not talk about.
I said administrative stuff, and I kind of went and said leadership, equipment, facility, duration, and then I was elaborating on duration.
You did a real broad overview.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. So we got minimum, maximum, duration with and without breaks. That's all important information, for these activities. And I'm surprised that's not already considered. That makes a huge difference in what your clients can and can't do. They can only handle 15 minutes at a time. That's not the right activity for them in a non-adaptive way.
Right.
You should have that factored into your activity analysis. What's the minimum duration to do this activity? Generally, tabletop role-playing gaming, you can't get anything done in 15 minutes. An adaptive SABM, maybe. A video game, yeah. Not tabletop role-playing. LARP, yeah.
You can show up.
You could do a LARP, but tabletop in 15 minutes just isn't enough. So I think it's really important to have those for all activities, because that's also going to determine what your client can and can't do, their minimum, their maximum, their duration, and their breaks, their stamina. You're going to already have that assessment of what their stamina is. You're going to have a doctor's prescription that says can't do more than 30 minutes of exertion or cognitive exertion or whatever. All right, this is not the right activity, or we have to do an adaptive version if we really want to use this activity. I'm surprised. I'm just not finding these in most assessment forms that are published out there in journals and everything. I'm shocked. What's missing?
Right. If you look at baseball,
yeah,
it's you have lots of breaks.
Yeah,
it's maybe a 12-hour game, but you have lots of breaks.
Yeah.
Golf.
It's just a break. That's just one break.
Just one break.
So again, we seem to come. So I came up once again with minimum, maximum number of participants, because these are under different categories. There's the social aspect versus the administrative aspect versus the physical aspect. Probably those redundancies I can get rid of. Right. But, as I'm going through brainstorming, I try not to get rid of it right away. Legal considerations for the activity. So, for example, minimum age, minimum legal age. I don't have that written in there. I'm just throwing those out there. I'm trying to think of some others besides that.
Do you require a license?
Yeah, licensing. Yeah, there's a whole insurance, insurance requirements. Safe. Now you talk about risk assessment required, because not all activities require it, but some do. Mm-hmm. Some activities you must have a risk assessment. Municipal restrictions. There are laws banning certain activities. Look at what's happened with the video game thing we just talked about today in the talk show. You hear about this, Dan?
No.
They want to ban loot boxes.
Oh, yeah. Consider that a form of gambling.
Drones. Drones are heavily banned in city and fly zones and stuff. Yeah. So if you want to have like a drone fighting or flying competition just for fun, you can't do that just anywhere. So there's altitude restrictions, and so these are all things you got to take into account. If you're going to go play baseball in your neighborhood on the street,
stickball. Stickballs are
just be careful about that. And then what are the key environmental considerations? This is going to be a long list from my optimization thing.
Right.
I just started with room temperature, lighting, seating, space, noise, blah. And some of these are already in the list. Some of them aren't. So as I get through that, I'm going to go back through the list. We go through my whole 2-year research of RPG optimization list, that long mini book, and put them all in here, and then see which ones have already been addressed versus which ones haven't, and then put them in there. So that's where this is at so far.
And then a half page of notes.
Yeah, whatever you want to put. Because now, generally, you would never do an assessment like this for clients. This is meant for professionals to do. In our case, role-playing game professionals or recreational therapy professionals, which there aren't hard limits on how large an assessment should be in professional standards. When I do security assessments of a facility, I use huge spreadsheets with hundreds and hundreds of variables. It can take me literally months to fill out the assessment. When I did the big energy and oil contract in Oklahoma, they expected me to take a minimum of 6 months. I got it done in 4 months, but I literally had my entire wall, ceiling to floor, when it was printed out. We used their big engineering department's plotter printer to print my spreadsheet out so I could see the whole thing, ceiling to floor, across from all their servers around the world, so that it was easier, because no matter how big a screen I got, I was always having to scroll through everything.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
Yeah, so I was able to plaster the entire wall with my spreadsheet. Made it so much easier to go through and find everything. And that was normal font. That was not enlarged font.
Yeah.
That's how huge that spreadsheet. I still have a miniature folded up version of it. That's because that's the biggest freaking spreadsheet I've ever printed. It was
the idea of a plotter printer makes me jealous, but
yeah, well, they had a whole engineering. This is a big energy oil company, so that was awesome. But I was a one-man team. I had to go and log into every single server around the world, one by one, run my scripts, get all the data, put it into my spreadsheet manually. They're all different operating systems and platforms, and put it all slowly into my spreadsheet and find on every system how the security was, how the performance was, and what needed to be done to optimize it. It was a performance assessment, and then a small section was a security assessment, because that affects performance sharing. And yeah, it took me 40 hours a week. That was set time, no more than 40, no less than 40, for 4 months. Oh my gosh. Oh, it was so dry. Paid really well. But that had a set time, right? We're talking about set times and scheduled activities. But yeah, there are a lot of variables that need to be taken into account. And role-playing gaming is a multivariate experience. And if we're going to have an accurate activity assessment that can then work between different games to figure out which games are better for what, we've got to make sure we have a good activity assessment tool. And I can't find one out there that exists that is applicable to role-playing gaming. And if it's not applicable to role-playing gaming, it doesn't help us. I've used, as I said, the generic one for years, but I've had to use a lot of my gut instinct to fill in a lot of the blanks.
What would be fun, I don't know if it'd be wise, but what would be fun is that you finally get the form that you really think is good. Release it to the public and say, I want you all to rate your favorite game.
Right. And then do a data analysis of that and put it all together. Yeah, but I would do it in a controlled way. I would send out the survey to as many people who are willing to do it that I trusted. Because if we just put it out in the public, that's going to be garbage data. Like you've seen the Indeed.com with the guillotines and the 99s and people just messing with us because they just have nothing better. They apparently have nothing better to do. That's not useful data. It just becomes a waste of our time. But if we sent a survey to a bunch of professionals that we trust, role-playing game professionals, therapists, etc., that's useful data. Oh, yeah. No, I mean, anybody that we trusted to not try to, there's no guarantees, but that we could trust to basically give real data. Yeah, I would. The more the merrier. The more the merrier. And that is my hope with this eventually, is that we turn this paper version initially into a full online assessment tool that we use religiously to determine the best fit. And I mean both on the RPG research and the RPG therapeutics. I already use the primitive version on the RPG therapeutic side to assess what to work with.
Right.
And I just have to, as I said, use my gut to fill in a lot of the blanks from experience. And that's worked okay. But now I have to teach others, employees, to do the same thing, and I'm not getting consistent results. You guys are giving me completely different results, even though I've trained you for 2 years.
Right.
They're a lot better. Your 2 results, yours and Danielle's, are way better than Dan's and Shane's were because they don't have the same training. So it shows that the training's only going so far with that assessment, unfortunately. So I have to make a better assessment tool that can survive some degree of variant, at least that if the standard deviation isn't as huge as it currently is. I can't find it out there. I'm searching and searching, and I really have trouble believing that nobody else has done this, right? It's the same thing back in 2004 when I really refused to believe that nobody in recreation therapy had used role-playing games. It's now been 15 years. Except for the last 5 years, the people that I've taught it because I saw my videos, they're doing it now. I still have yet to meet a recreational therapist that ever considered using role-playing games. We'll find out at ATRA. I'll try to double-check that. But if they're all just the last 5 years or so, that's a whole generational shift. But
Right.
I just couldn't accept that I was the only person in TR to think of this.
Somebody has to be first.
Yeah, but I don't ever imagine myself being the one doing that. So that seems like huge hubris, and I'm very wary of that. So the same thing with these activity analyses. I'm like, please, anybody out there, if you know of a well-tested, valid and reliable activity analysis that includes variables that would apply to role-playing games of all types, please save me months of work. Please, I really don't. I don't want to reinvent the wheel if it's already been done, but so far I'm going through the databases at the university and everything. I can't find anything decent. I'm finding only recent articles of criticisms of everything that's been done for nearly 100 years. People have been doing these activity assessments for 50 plus years, and they haven't changed that much. That seems like a big deal. And it's a disservice to clients, don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's been avoided because it's work.
And these are all play people.
They want to put in what is required to get the thing done. They don't want to do the work that doesn't feel at the moment like it's going to produce something. I want to get right into the game.
So do you think we really are the first people really to do this at this level for this type of tool?
Yeah.
Because I wonder about Digra, right? They're pretty heavily into this stuff. I can't find anything in their archives beyond the same basic stuff. They've got exactly the same type of stuff in their archives.
Right.
Just as basic. They just happen to tweak some of them to be more specific to gaming, but then they're not as applicable outside of gaming. And that's not as good a science. We want these tools to work for all activities, including role-playing game variations.
Well, see, that's the other thing. It's easier to focus on the one thing that you want to work on and not worry that it might be usable by somebody else later.
But therapeutic recreation should cover this. That's what therapeutic recreation does. All recreational activities, right?
So why haven't we been using Dungeons and Dragons since 1980? Come on.
In TR?
Yeah.
That's what I've been saying. I'm like, how can nobody in TR have used role-playing gaming?
A lot of the great things that have been invented in the world are some of them are like you see somebody do something.
It's so obvious.
And you're like going, I should
how
have
does
thought
nobody...
of that.
Yeah, that's my point. Like, how does anybody
like
not
the
see
little
this?
plastic table that holds the pizza box off the pizza.
To keep from squishing the pizza, right.
Somebody invented that, and everybody else who sees that is going...
I'm just way too afraid. I'm way too afraid to think that somebody else has not already done it. And I would much rather save myself the headache. But it's starting to look that way for this. And this is really pivotal for what we do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm like, I'm going to have to put more time into this one.
You've already invented it. Please make our job easier.
Please. And everybody else.
Yeah.
I got plenty of other things on the plate that I have to do. So,
it could be also that if somebody has done it, it is the silo effect.
Yeah, that's the other problem is way too many silos. Yeah, their secret sauce, exactly. Well, I think the key thing is I'm the only person I think who has open source so ingrained in me that I look at things this broadly. So that may very well be the case. Because TR is as broad as it is, and I get the gaming thing, and nobody in TR did gaming before, role-playing gaming before. And I got the open source attitude of trying to be as inclusive as possible. It may well be. I'm just like, all right, more on my to-do list. But we've got to have a really good comprehensive activity analysis form. We really do. And it has to include role-playing gaming and all other activities. Now, I hope we can whittle it back down after we get everything included, because there are clearly redundancies in here.
Right.
But we have to first just brainstorm, get them on there. So, will it do any good for me to send you guys the soft copy of this, or is that just too much for you guys to grok?
It's not a grok problem, it's a bandwidth problem.
Well, okay, yeah. As far as bandwidth, is that just going to be more white noise at this stage?
Especially when I'm trying to gear up to not having you here.
Okay, good point. All right, understood. So I'll keep chiseling away at it and sharing updates with you guys, but we can't really proceed with our activity analysis series until we've got that resolved.
Right.
Which I really, really want us to do on BECME and 5th edition, because I really want us to show statistically the radical difference between versions of D&D.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have one of our research people that is up on these kind of assessments?
That's a good point. That was who I'm meeting with tomorrow.
Yeah.
I just want to run it by you guys first. So tomorrow, if I have time, I'm planning to run this by whoever. It depends on who shows up for the research meeting. But my Tuesday meetings tend to be more people. So we have a lot of great people. And we do have social sciences. And again, nobody else is from a recreation background like I am. Because most of the recreation people don't do research. They do recreation. They do the activities. They hate research. And as I said, I think there's a high level of ADHD in TR.
Right.
So there aren't a whole lot of ADHD researchers. There are some. We've got a couple on our team, not just me. We've got a couple of researchers who are, and they really struggle. You know, they're still trying to finish their doctorate and stuff, and they are professors. But it's more of a struggle for them because of the ADHD.
They're the ones that want to know the molecular structure of popcorn and the velocity of an unladed swallow.
African or European.
No!
All right. Well, we covered for our theory days. We usually go about an hour shorter, so we're a little over 9 o'clock there. So I think we've covered this effectively. I hope this is still of value. I think the questions and discussions we're having about this are serious. I think they really are important to this entire field and many other fields. TR, occupational therapy, etc. When I say TR, I mean therapy, recreation, or when I say RT, I mean recreation therapy. They are the same field, but they have slightly different sides of the coin, if you will. One is more modified, and one is less formal, but they're part of the same profession. This has huge consequences to clients when you have people trained using these tools blindly, which most people are using them blindly. All the literature I can find using these tools.
So, I'm in a TR field, and I don't know of RPG research existence at all, let alone you.
Although after this September, that should change.
I am trying to find a resource, say, that compares certain activities, like let's say ball games.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something like that already out there that gives an activity analysis for a group of things?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of those
that are already filled out, so I can just go card games and then select 5 different card games based on the activity analysis.
Yeah, there's tons of them out there.
Okay.
Yep. In fact, most of them provide examples using specific activities with filled out. You will see, if you do a search for activity analyses, most of the ones you find are filled out forms, not blank forms.
Okay.
Most of them are filled out forms for so many different activities. And I've been pouring through all of them. They all keep using the same sources and such. It's quite a circular investigation. And then, as I said, only the last few years am I seeing on academia.edu and research.gate.net, not really in the journals yet, all of this questioning of the validity and reliability of all these assessment tools that have been used for decades. So I'm not the only one questioning this.
Right.
I just seem to be the only one so far
doing something about it.
Yeah, going, okay, fine. If it's not out there, let's make it. Fine. I don't want to have to do it myself, but if I have to, let's get it done. That's become a common mantra, hasn't it?
Yep.
All right. Well, anyway, we'll wrap it up. If you have any questions, or if you have answers to these questions, please, I'm begging you, save me from having to go down this yet another rabbit hole. I've already started down it. Please.
It's a full Warren.
Please, yes, please save me from this. If you know somewhere that something already exists. There's that whole group that did that stuff. That one role-playing game book that came out recently. right? They're their whole own silo of 50 people, 50 different people.
Oh yeah.
You know, but they don't have any tools like that I can find other than the existing templates. So, yeah. And there are assessment tools, assessments of role-playing games done by individual people here and there from different professions and backgrounds. But they're all limited to just role-playing gaming, and they're always from a very narrow scope. The sociological aspects of such and such. Rec therapy is always biopsychosocial. It's not spiritual for some people, but biopsychosocial is we cover all of these. And all the others always focus on just little narrow pieces. And we've got to figure the holistic picture. What?
I'm just thinking, the spiritual assessment of role-playing games, and being able to use that against some of the people who say that, for example, Dungeons and Dragons is the work of the devil.
Right.
Yeah. It may be worthwhile to bring that up,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
just so that we can debunk it.
I'm saying recreation therapy, the literature all says biopsychosocial, and then there's often in parentheses spiritual thrown in.
Zen and motorcycle maintenance. Part
of the holistic perspective of TR and people is taking into account, are people meeting their spiritual needs? Are they going to church? They get all the biopsychosocial benefits of that, and they get a quote-unquote spiritual benefit from that, you know, because it gives them a spiritual ease, if you will. The problem is spiritual is generally antithesis of science, so that's why it tends to be kind of in parentheses and focus on the biopsychosocial.
Yeah. But, I said, considering some of the obstacles we have to go through, it may be
you
worthwhile.
could do a study to see, does it address the spiritual needs? People who participate in role-playing games, are they getting some of their spiritual needs met that others go to church for? Without it being meta. It may not be adding, it may not address anything about is there life after death or a god or a creation or any of that stuff, but that they, just like meditation helps meet a psycho and social needs, and for some people a spiritual need, prayer. Part of that is biopsychosocial, and there's a spiritual thing that helps them just feel better because you're addressing the spiritual craving that human beings seem to have. You look through all cultures of history of humankind, there's some variation of spiritual need there. And not all of them are full meta, right? They don't all address life and death and all of those things. They just may address just that need, that craving for understanding of where we come from and all that other stuff, and addressing that. So rec therapists are taught to not forget that, even though it's a smaller section. Most other professions, too taboo.
There's the TR magazine that they have at the library, comes out once a month.
The TR Journal, Therapeutic Recreation Journal.
Yeah. Every single month has activities that revolve around either religion or holidays and various things, because sometimes people will need to focus on, well, I want to do something creative, but it has to honor God. So let's go with this.
And we deal with people on their deathbed.
Right.
We deal with people not long after they're born, little babies doing early activities and such. And, it's almost cradle to grave care. Not quite, but almost, in rec therapy. And not a lot of professions can say that. I mean, certainly doctors, but they tend to specialize and not be cradle to grave, except for the general practitioners, which are becoming more and more rare. Nurses certainly, but again, they tend to specialize instead of having a nurse who just works this department. Rec therapists often float across many different departments.
I have literally worked cradle to grave. Like the first person to touch the baby and the last person to touch the body.
Yeah, well, as a nurse's aide, I had to clean corpses.
Yeah, did that.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. Well,
ending on that note,
cheerful death note. Yes, John, Dan.
Just to add some levity to the end,
please.
Pertaining to your kind of frustration with it, feeling like you're the only person who's done.
I don't want to believe that. See, that seems like just total egocentric hubris. I don't want to go down that road.
So this is a concept that,
in fact, it scares me to even contemplate that.
This is a concept that I've also, often had to contend with being an artist and a creator, where it's the concept of what is originality? Everything's already been created.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a matter of creating something new. It's a matter of creativity. Something creative comes from having different things and connecting them in new ways.
Right.
And it may be that you're the first person who's deciding to connect therapy and role-playing game.
Yeah.
Yeah. You may be the first one who's like,
well, I don't think I know I'm not the first one to connect therapy and role-playing game, but recreation therapy and role-playing gaming. I almost have no doubt now, after 15 years of asking and talking to TRs, I'm really thinking I am the first one in TR, just specifically TR.
And considering the history
and I've been really resistant to that.
Considering the history of role-playing games, especially the stigma,
logically it makes sense.
Yeah, maybe not necessarily because of the availability and the cohesiveness,
the stigma,
but the social barriers.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally get that.
Yeah. So instead of talking about our cleaning corpses.
Yeah. Thank you. Oh, but you had to bring it back up.
Yeah.
So sign language, you learn this is dead, but what most people do is they go like this, and the teacher always went, they're not dead and come back to life. A lot of people go for their sign language. Like, no, it's dead, and then pull their hands away.
Well, what if they want to be necromancers?
Zombie!
Because it says dead, not dead. Ah, you brought, exactly. You brought zombies.
Zombie!
So it's,
you get your hands like this, and then dead. And then pull your hands away. Or continue with whatever sign. But yeah.
Get to the T-Rex.
Do the creep. He was on NPR this weekend.
Yeah?
Roger Waters at 73 years old. And reveling in his differenceness. How he cannot be the bell curve.
Right.
He's always an outlier, always deviant.
And
it was
proud
an
of it.
It was an entertaining interview. It was
Show me the crowd so I can avoid it.
It was on Fresh Air. What's that?
Show me the crowd so I can avoid it.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, I hope you found this useful. We will be back. So I'll be back tomorrow, 9 a.m. to noon, with the researchers. I'll be talking with the researchers about this and see if they have some insights that hopefully can solve this. Again, we've got 2 or 3 full PhDs now on our team and several PhD candidates on our team. Quite a few master's level and then a few, bachelor's onward. So we've got a pretty robust research team growing here from many different disciplines. It's pretty awesome. I'm really stoked.
Can't wait to start publishing.
We're working on it. We're putting the blog postings out there. That's their early practice. They're getting used to the process. And so we put out quite a few blog postings this year from them. So I've only put out a few here and there. They've been putting out between Omar and Eric and Jonathan, and we're
who's having the easier time, the PhDs or the lower?
The PhDs actually tend to get stuck in analysis paralysis, trying to do too much.
Right.
And I have to coach them through, just let it go. It's only 1 or 2 pages. And they're like, oh, I got to finish this survey. And I'm like, well, that's great, and I love that you're doing that, but you have to be in the routine of releasing every month. That's why this exercise is here, to get you used to the release process. So no, the higher level ones have more trouble doing the small stuff,
right?
Which is the incrementalism towards the big stuff. So and they're enjoying the exercise, they're enjoying the challenge of it. So yeah, I'm really excited about this too. I really do think by this time next year, I've always wanted us to be a research institute of one of them was calling it yesterday a think tank.
Right.
We're gonna have a nice diverse think tank. We have people who've never done role playing gaming on board, at least 2 people now. From very different disciplines, from different parts of the world, all over the world now. I think this is going to really inform some great research over time. So, very excited. As long as people stick to it and look at this in the long view, the long picture, I think it's going to have wonderful benefits.
As long as you don't have too much to think and drown in the think tank.
Right. So on that note, feel like Grand Tour. And on that disappointing note, anyway, that was great. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back again. So if you're in the Spokane area, join us Friday, May 31st up at Sky Prairie Park between 5 to 8 p.m. 5:30, 7:30 is when I'm shooting, but you can just say 5 to 8 p.m. We're going to be up there demonstrating all of our different activities of tabletop role-playing, electronic role-playing game, Neverwinter Nights, AR, VR, cooperative music, drum circles, LARPing of all the different types. We're going to try to demonstrate all of those while we're up there. And so you're welcome to come check it out. That's Friday. And Saturday, you've got...
Saturday is International Tabletop Day. I will be at Spokane Valley's Uncle's at the Spokane Valley Mall, and we will be playing all kinds of tabletop games. Not necessarily all role-playing games. There will be a lot of not role-playing games
that are tabletop games. Yeah, and if you're not here in Spokane, wherever you are, this is going to be happening in your area, so do check it out.
It is international.
Yeah.
And then the next week after that is Free RPG Day, where it will be focused on the role-playing games.
Woohoo! Are we doing anything special for that day? Is that a Saturday?
It is a Saturday.
So I've been wondering, as we start preparing for the Parks and Rec 9 to noon thing, if we should reboot 9 to noon training, if it'll get other people in that aren't making it to Sunday, Monday. I don't want people who are already doing Sunday, Monday coming to Saturday if they're already getting what they need.
Yeah.
But if we've got people who can't do the Sunday, Monday thing, sometimes Saturdays works better for people. But we do want so we got this whole group of GMs who keep saying, don't remove us from the roster. We want to participate, but we can only do the weekends or, it's school or whatever. And school's about to be out. And the 9 a.m. to noon is the deal we're working with Spokane Parks and Rec, TR department.
Right.
We've got to have people showing up from Saturdays 9 a.m. to noon reliably. I've got to know who those are. So I'm debating rebooting doing training on 9 to noon in addition to everything else, on top of everything else. But in preparation for the Parks and Rec, so we know who we can count on.
Well, just because I don't show up to the Saturday training doesn't mean you can't count on me for the actual Parks and Rec.
Well, we can't use them if they don't show up for training.
I'm talking about me.
Oh, well, you and Danielle I'm not worried about.
Yeah.
It's everybody else I'm worried about. Because we have some people who just want to show up for the actual games and don't want to show up for the rest of the training. And we can't use them if they don't go through the rest of the training. And that's a problem. So, and we've got literally like 10 GMs who I've talked to. They don't want to be removed from the roster. They keep saying they'll be able to do weekends. It's just been a timing thing. And so I keep wanting to reinstigate that, but I also worry that we overload again. So, and maybe it just has to wait till August to resume it, but that's probably the best thing to do, is resume that in August.
Well, yeah.
Because I'll be gone in July, and that would put the burden on you guys if I did that.
Yeah.
But we've got to be able to tell Spokane Parks and Rec that we do have people we can count on. So, besides just you, me, and Danielle. Is that something we could count on you on Saturdays, 9 to noon?
Yeah. I mean, I was able to make it. Then you guys switched to Sunday. And
Yeah,
unless my job gives me mandatory overtime, in which case, but I'm in a position where they don't really give mandatory overtime for.
But all these other GMs, and again, I wish we could get Charles back. And that's a bummer. He was really coming along nicely there. So, anyway, all right. Wherever you may be well. Happy gaming. Namarie.
Dream well.
Sorry
Have a good night.
Went so rambly today.